On a chilly autumn evening in a quiet neighborhood, the sound of leaves crunching underfoot filled the air. The streets were dimly lit, the golden glow of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Marcus Carter walked with his German shepherd, Zeus, at his side. They were a striking pair. Marcus, a tall, broad-shouldered black man with a quiet confidence, and Zeus, a well-trained, alert dog that matched his master's stride. To the casual observer, they might have seemed like an ordinary man and his dog out for an evening walk. But Marcus carried a past that would make even the bravest hesitate to cross him. He had come to this small town to start fresh, to escape the ghosts of his military career. Years spent in covert operations had honed him into a weapon, a shadow in the night capable of handling the most dangerous missions. His reputation as one of the Army's most lethal operatives was known only to a select few. But to Marcus, those years were behind him. Here, in the sleepy town, he was just another man trying to live a quiet life. The air was crisp, and Marcus inhaled deeply, enjoying the solitude. Zeus sniffed at the ground, his ears twitching at every faint sound. It was their nightly routine, a walk to clear Marcus's mind and give Zeus the exercise he craved. But tonight felt different. There was an unease in the air, a faint prickling sensation at the back of Marcus's neck. He paused, scanning the empty street. The distant hum of a car engine and the rustle of leaves were all he could hear. Still, his instincts told him to stay alert. Years of survival in hostile environments had taught him never to ignore that feeling. As they turned a corner onto a darker, less traveled street, Zeus's ears perked up. A low growl rumbled in his throat, and Marcus immediately tensed. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, his voice calm but edged with caution. Zeus's eyes locked on a shadowy figure further down the street. Marcus's sharp eyes quickly took in the scene. Several men lingering near a parked truck. Their posture was casual, but there was something off about the way they stood, the way they watched him. Marcus kept walking, his pace steady, his expression unreadable. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the tension in the air was undeniable. As he passed, the group's murmured voices grew louder, and one of the men stepped forward, blocking his path. He was a wiry man with a smug grin, his hands stuffed in the pockets of a worn jacket. "Hey there," the man drawled, his tone dripping with mock friendliness. "You're a long way from where you're supposed to be, aren't you?" Marcus stopped, his face calm, his eyes cold and calculating. Zeus stood at his side, the dog's muscles coiled like a spring ready to snap. "Just out for a walk," Marcus replied evenly, his voice carrying no hint of fear. The man chuckled, and the others closed in slightly, forming a loose semicircle around Marcus and Zeus. "See, the thing is," the man continued, "we don't much like strangers wandering around here, especially not your kind." His grin widened as he emphasized the last two words, his meaning unmistakable. Marcus' jaw tightened, but he didn't react. Years of discipline kept his emotions in check, though his mind was already calculating. He noted the positions of each man, the possible escape routes, and the makeshift weapons they carried, chains, bats, a knife glinting in the faint light. They clearly thought they had the upper hand. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Zeus let out another growl, louder this time, and the men shifted uneasily. "You should keep your mutt under control," one of them sneered. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his voice calm but laced with warning. "Zeus is very well trained, but he doesn't take kindly to threats." The leader of the group laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. "Big talk. Let's see if you're as tough as you look." He pulled a chain from his pocket, the heavy links clinking ominously. Marcus took a slow step back, his hands loose at his sides. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Walk away." The man smirked, taking another step forward. "Or what?" he taunted. In that moment, the air seemed to shift. Marcus's eyes hardened, and his stance subtly changed. The predator they had unwittingly provoked was now fully awake. "Or you'll regret it," he said, his voice like steel. The tension snapped like a taut wire, and the group surged forward, weapons raised, but they had no idea what was coming. As the chaos erupted, the scene cut to black, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats, wondering how the confrontation would unfold and just what kind of man they were dealing with. The instant the men lunged forward, Marcus moved. His years of training took over, every muscle and reflex honed to perfection. To the gang, it seemed as though he barely moved at all, just a blur of precise motion. Zeus barked sharply, his powerful body low to the ground, ready for Marcus's command. The first man swung his chain, but Marcus sidestepped effortlessly. With a swift motion, he grabbed the chain mid-swing, yanking it out of the man's grip. The gang member stumbled forward, caught off guard by Marcus's speed. Before he could recover, Marcus delivered a sharp kick to his knee, sending him collapsing to the ground with a cry of pain. The others hesitated for a split second, shocked by how quickly their leader had gone down. But their hesitation didn't last long. They surged forward, anger and adrenaline fueling their actions. Marcus's mind stayed calm, his movements calculated. He dodged a bat aimed at his ribs, countering with a quick strike to the attacker's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. Zeus didn't stay idle. At Marcus's sharp command, the dog leaped at one of the men, knocking him off balance. Zeus didn't bite, but his sheer weight and aggression were enough to send the man sprawling. The dog stood over him, growling low and deep, daring him to move. Still, the gang didn't back down. They were too caught up in their bravado, too certain that their numbers would overpower one man and his dog. But Marcus wasn't just any man. He had faced enemies far more dangerous, in situations far more dire. These men were amateurs, driven by hate but lacking the skill to back it up. As Marcus expertly disarmed another attacker, memories flickered through his mind. He hadn't always been this controlled, this precise. He'd been a young recruit once, raw and angry, seeking purpose in a world that had often pushed him aside. The military had shaped him, not just physically but mentally. It had taught him discipline, focus, and the art of survival. He had risen through the ranks, his natural talent and unyielding determination earning him a place in the Army's elite special forces. But that life had come at a cost. Marcus had seen and done things that most people couldn't imagine. His hands had carried out missions that haunted him, missions that blurred the line between right and wrong. When he finally walked away, it wasn't out of weakness. It was a choice to reclaim the humanity he felt slipping away. Coming to this quiet town had been his way of starting over, of finding peace. But peace, it seemed, was a fragile thing. The fight continued, though it was clear that the gang was outmatched. Marcus didn't want to seriously hurt them. Despite their aggression, they were still just people. Misguided, cruel, but not beyond redemption. Still, he had to make it clear that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. Another man charged at him with a knife, the blade gleaming in the dim light. Marcus sidestepped, grabbing the attacker's wrist and twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. He followed up with a quick strike to the man's shoulder, sending him stumbling back. The remaining men started to falter, their confidence unraveling. "You don't want this," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "Walk away now and I'll pretend this never happened." For a moment, it seemed like they might listen. One of the younger men, barely more than a teenager, glanced nervously at his fallen companions. But the leader, still clutching his injured knee, barked out a command. "Don't back down, he's just one guy." Marcus sighed inwardly. Some people couldn't see reason until it was too late. As the tension hung in the air, Marcus's thoughts drifted to why he had come here in the first place. This town, with its quiet streets and friendly faces, had seemed like a place where he could finally escape the shadows of his past. He'd rented a modest house on the edge of town, spent his days fixing up the property and volunteering at the local animal shelter. It was at the shelter that he'd met Zeus, a rescue with a fierce loyalty and a troubled past of his own. The bond between them had been instant, two kindred spirits finding solace in each other. But not everyone in town had welcomed Marcus. There had been whispers, sideways glances, and the occasional muttered slur. He had ignored them, focusing on the good people he'd met. The kind neighbors, the shelter staff who appreciated his help, the barista at the local coffee shop who always remembered his order. Still, he wasn't naive. He knew that prejudice ran deep in some hearts, and tonight was proof of that. The gang regrouped, their movements slower, more cautious. They circled Marcus and Zeus, trying to find an opening. But Marcus could see the cracks in their resolve. Fear was starting to seep in, replacing their earlier bravado. "You've already lost," Marcus said, his tone even. "Don't make this worse for yourselves." One of the men, a burly figure with a shaved head, sneered. "You think you're tough. You think you can just walk in here and act like you own the place." Marcus met his gaze unflinching. "I don't want trouble, but I won't let anyone push me around." The man lunged, but Marcus was ready. He sidestepped and delivered a sharp elbow to the man's chest, knocking the wind out of him. The rest of the gang froze, their confidence crumbling completely. "Enough," Marcus said firmly. "This ends now." The leader, still on the ground, glared up at him. "This ain't over," he spat. "You'll regret this." Marcus didn't respond. He simply held the man's gaze until the gang started to retreat, dragging their injured comrades with them. Zeus growled one last time, a warning that echoed in the silence. As the gang disappeared into the night, Marcus stood still, his heart pounding. He glanced down at Zeus, who looked up at him with unwavering loyalty. "Good boy," Marcus said softly, kneeling to ruffle the dog's fur. Zeus wagged his tail, his tension melting away. But Marcus knew this wasn't the end. The leader's parting words echoed in his mind, a reminder that some battles couldn't be avoided. He had tried to leave his old life behind, but trouble had found him anyway. And now Marcus realized he might have to confront the past he had worked so hard to escape. As he and Zeus walked back home, the shadows seemed longer, the night colder. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't know what was coming next, but one thing was certain: he would be ready for it.